Welcome to another inspiring episode of the Black Empowerment Hub podcast. I'm your host, Jacqueline Malone, CEO of Blind Resistance Clothing Brand, where our tagline, "For the Culture, by the Culture," represents our commitment to empowerment, sustainability, and uplifting underserved communities. Thank you for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you will never miss an episode. Today we have something truly special for you. We're taking a deep dive into the making of Big Steps, an emotionally gripping, visually stunning short film that explores themes of identity, resilience, and the power of human connection. We are honored to have an incredible panel of creatives joining us today. Oliver William Staton, the writer and director of Big Steps, and Intae Kim, the lead actor. We'll discuss their creative journeys, what it took to bring Big Steps to life, and the more profound messages behind the film. You're in for a real treat. Stay tuned after this brief message, and we'll be right back with our guests.
This episode is brought to you by the Support Black Excellence Foundation and their Support Excellence Initiative. At the Support Black Excellence Foundation, we're on a mission to foster a brighter future for all, particularly in underserved Black communities. Through strategic partnerships, mentorship programs, community service projects, and financial initiatives, we are committed to driving meaningful change where it's needed most. We invite you to join us in this remarkable journey of progress and transformation. Together, we can turn our vision into a reality. Let's shape a future that is equitable and inclusive, where empowerment, elevation, and excellence intersect to create a legacy of positive change. Thank you to the Support Black Excellence Foundation and their Support Excellence Initiative for sponsoring this podcast.
Welcome back. Big Steps is more than a film. It's a powerful story of perseverance, transformation, and connection told through stunning cinematography and heartfelt performances. Today, we're going behind the scenes with the minds and talents who made it happen. Let's give a warm welcome to Oliver and Intae. Welcome, guys.
Hello, hello.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome. And before we start, I want to briefly mention Benjamin Sivo. Benjamin is the co-writer and editor of Big Steps. I want to ensure that his name is mentioned as one of the great creators behind this wonderful project. And we also have Andy Leong as well. He is over the cinematography of the film. So we want to mention both of those individuals. Oliver, we'll start with you.
All right.
You are the writer and director of Big Steps. I have learned that you are a visionary filmmaker known for creating compelling and culturally resonant narratives. Most interestingly, your transition from a Tesla engineer to an award-winning director who brings a unique, methodical approach to storytelling, and Big Steps is no exception. Tell us about your fascinating journey from engineer to filmmaker and what sparked that career change, and how does your engineering background shape your storytelling today?
Sure. Thanks for the introduction. My first degree was in electrical engineering. And so I worked in engineering, first at General Electric and then eventually at Tesla. Me and my wife were living in California at that time. And don't get me wrong, I loved working in engineering, especially kind of the intense collaboration that happens in that space. But it's also an environment that's extremely filled with pressure. That's kind of like persistent pressure. And at that time in my life, I also loved that, but it's not something that I wanted to keep going forward when I had a family. And so I started thinking kind of what adjustments could I make in my life at that time. And I started seeing a therapist at the time, but that was primarily to figure out how to manage stress at work. And I thought that's what we were going to talk about, but we ended up talking about that for about the first 5 minutes. And then we started talking about film for some reason. And I I think for the first time in that session opened up the possibility of not being an engineer in my life. And when I did that, then kind of exploring some of the things that I did after work, photography, I dabbled a little bit in DJing, not saying I did anything with that, but it was definitely a space where I got to just play. And there was an opportunity that came where I could learn a little bit of filmmaking fundamental stuff. And that led into taking a shot at my first short film. And at that point, something kind of clicked. And I saw that a lot of the thinking and approach that I took into my engineering work, as well as that kind of more free-flowing play and creativity that I do after work, came together. And kind of seeing that, I talked with my wife. We made kind of this long roadmap plan of like, well, if there's going to be a switch, what does that look like? And a big part of that was going to film school. And so we moved to London. I don't know how long of a version you want on that one, but another kind of dream of ours was to live in Europe at some point in our life. So this was a way to hit two birds with one stone, live in Europe and, me do this career change thing. So I went to the London Film School. That's where I met both Benjamin and Andy. And that's kind of my transition into film. And the second part of that question was, how does engineering support my filmmaking efforts, right?
Yes.
I think for me, the biggest change has been like a relationship that I have with myself throughout all of this work. Because when I was, at least the way that I approached my work in engineering, there was a lot of, I want to suppress the kind of feelings that come up in the work, because those can generate assumptions that aren't necessarily helpful. So it was a lot of like, how do I stay analytical in this moment? Whereas in filmmaking, that's not always the case. In fact, like I have to like call upon whether it's instinct or intuition or some other kind of softer science to the craft, and then figure out a way to like marry that to well, how are we actually going to make the day? And so the engineering stuff is an area where I feel a lot of strength. And so in moments of uncertainty, I can lean on that. So I can lean on the technical, or, like if we need to do A, B, C, and D, I can like use the engineering to create the structure. And then within the structure, I can kind of have that play. So yeah, that combination has helped me execute projects, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really great story. It's a power story of your growth as a person and learning oneself as you're traveling through all these different entities and trying to navigate that. And then, of course, leaning on your talents of engineering. I do that a lot. I've come from like project management and product management. I do that in my businesses today, lean on that knowledge and expertise. It does get you through, in those times of uncertainty when you don't know what to do, you can always lean back on those things. And I'm glad you took the opportunity to take care of self, because that is truly very, very important to do. So great job on that. And Intae, you're the lead actor in Big Steps film, bringing an authentic and profoundly moving performance to that production. You have an impressive resume spanning stage, television, and film, including roles in HBO's Succession and FX Fargo, which I want to tell you, I love Fargo.
I love it too.
I love it. Yes.
It was among my favorite shows before I booked it. I was very excited.
Yes, Fargo is great. That's my little jam over there. I love Fargo. So kudos on that one. And you have the gift of bringing complex characters to life. So I'm really happy about the work that you do. So tell us what drew you to Big Steps, your character, and what excited you most about playing that role.
Sure. I mean, what brought me to this role and this project at the very outset, as it often happens in our industry, was actually a friend. So Oliver met my friend Bloom, I believe, at a film festival. And Bloom really played the connector between Oliver and me, who was thousands of miles away in LA at the time. He was like, hey, would you have any interest in working on this project in Chicago? So once I got in touch with Oliver, I got to see his incredible short film, Places We Knew. So that's also what was part of that was one of the factors that drew me into this project, just seeing the specificity of vision, how much this person was comfortable and wanted to explore like the vulnerabilities that are inherent to trying to be human, trying to live life in this very complicated, beautiful, tragic, amazing, horrifying, wonderful world that we live in. And then when I got to read the script for Big Steps in particular, there was a lot that I recognized. Like, I've worked the job where I don't really know what I'm doing. It's just seems like a function of this kind of capitalist system that we live in. I've been that daydreamer that's thought about like how I can escape the doldrums of all that. And it also manages to do that special thing that some of my favorite projects like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind or Severance or whatever it is can do, which is to use surrealistic elements or elements that are inherently cinematic and filmic and feel not real to really speak to emotions that come out of very real situations. So all that is what drew me to this project, both in terms of like the personal and literal aspect of like, oh, how did I find out about this? And then the more professional and artistic aspect of like what actually made this project resonate with me.
That's wonderful, and a beautiful analogy of the film and that process. I love that. And Oliver, tell us, what was the inspiration behind Big Steps? Like, was there a personal connection to the story, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I wondered this question myself because it's definitely not like a clean thread from inspiration to kind of idea. It initially started because it was time to do another project. And I sat down with Benjamin, and we worked together in film school, but we've been wanting to do another project together, specifically from the writing stage. And so I met up with him, and I had, 3 ideas that I wanted to pitch to him, and they were just really like scenes. And the scene that I had for him was like, okay, there's a guy who saw Bigfoot, and he has been sent to like therapy, like let's say even like the psych ward, where he has to stay there in order to come to terms with the fact that Bigfoot's not real. And so he's kind of forced to convince himself that he's not real. And there's this kind of draining of energy within himself when he does this to himself. And then when he goes outside, when he's finally released, he sees Bigfoot in the woods and he gets dragged back in, but he has a big smile on his face. That's kind of like the moment I had. The story is not like that at all, but it was like the seed of like, okay, what if we explored this character who had to battle between what society might expect of him versus what's true to himself. And when we lean in one direction, we might have like social acceptance, but we might lose something in the process, versus if we stay true to ourselves, we might be alienated a bit more, but there could be a certain kind of joy and authenticity to kind of one's truth. And I think Big Steps does explore that kind of theme. So that part of it stayed true. And then at the same time, again, when I'm like looking for the answer of like what inspired me to like come up with this particular story. But my brother, it was kind of going through his career navigation stuff. So was just a topic in our family of like, well, what should we do? How should we do it? And you can't help but like throw your own advice into the ring in that moment. But then in doing so, you wonder, it's like, how is my advice impacting his thinking? I hope he stays true to kind of his path, rather than just because his dad said something or his brother said something, that like, I hope that doesn't, pull him away from his own truth. So then the ideas of exploring that space in a very real situation, like Henry, the protagonist in Big Steps, does. He kind of goes through all of those like things that we do go through, going shopping at the supermarket, being at work. But then within that space, how can we explore that idea of like that like suppressed part in ourselves that we kind of end up being the guardian of, whether it comes out or doesn't come out. I think I'll stick with that answer for now in terms of what was the inspiration.
I love the idea of wanting one to stay authentic to self. I think that's so important for us all to do, is to stay very authentic. And a lot of times it's hard because we don't even know ourselves. We don't spend time with ourselves. So this film seems to take you through that journey of focusing on that, and to acknowledge yourself so that you can move forward in life. That's a wonderful answer. So tell me about Benjamin Sivo, in working with him. He's a co-writer. How was that union, that partnership there?
Yeah. So me and Benjamin, we met, like I mentioned before, in film school. And there was a project that we worked on at the later stages of our program, where he directed a film that was very quirky. It was like it was a quirky film, Harold and Maude vibes. And I was the production designer on that one. And I hadn't production designed before, but part of that term was about exploring that new department. And so already I was stepping into a place where like, I don't really know what I'm doing, Benjamin, but I'm going to kind of give my best at it. And he created such a welcoming space where he's like, yeah, experiment. Not only that, but like, let's throw out new ideas and let's just like make it happen, And so I remember that kind of spirit of openness that he had. But then on top of that, we just like gelled in a way where very rarely we had to, I mentioned before that like very analytical mind versus that space of play. Very rarely did we ever go into like the analytical space, because we like connected so hard on the space of play. And I think in going through the writing stages, part of it was like, yeah, we do need to write this thing, but let's just kind of have fun doing it. And the ideas that we would go back and forth on, sometimes we just get lost in the weeds, cracking up on like, whoa, we could do it this way and that way. And then something would kind of click in both of us of like, oh, hold on, there's like something real here. And kind of without taking a moment, to like self-correct, we would naturally go into, oh, wait, let's follow that thread. Something feels real here. And then we start to unpack it. And again, we get lost in the weeds of play again, but like that all continued to just like progress us forward. So even when we thought we were getting distracted, actually that would just kind of open a new door for us. And so the type of collaboration that he and I had, I haven't really found that kind of relationship before with another creative. So it was a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to the next one with them for sure.
Intae, can you walk us through bringing your character to life? And were there any personal experiences that helped you connect to that role?
Well, in looking to bring Henry to life, I won't speak for Oliver, but I also come to the arts from a little bit of an analytical background. So for me, there's a lot of homework to do in terms of like, hey, what is the mechanism by which we can measure progress or the increasing tragedy, or what the stakes are beat to beat to beat in this story, right? So for Henry, like, we look at him, ostensibly it seems to be that he's stuck in this nothing job, but it's not just the nothing job. It's a life that seems to have lost its meaning, seems to have lost its spark, its joy, right? So for me, it's calling on those moments where I wasn't feeling the joy. I wasn't connected to the joy of life day in, day out. So I've struggled with and gotten a handle on depression. But it was an interesting exercise to go back and be like, okay, what were those days actually like? What was it that really caused me to feel like I needed to just get through the motions, just to get through the day, right? So then you go into your little actor diary, and then write the backstory of like, okay, so what are the things underpinning this? What are his relationships with family like, loved ones, friends? Are there those relationships? If there are relationships on paper, like how does the reality of those relationships not quite meet what he expects or wants or hopes for? Right. So for me, in getting closer to Henry and getting closer to performance time, it was about reflecting on why I felt the way that I felt back in those days, and it was helpful to listen to some of the music that I was listening to during that time, and just get back into painting with those kind of muted colors that I was painting life with at the time.
Wow. This story is something else. It's I just feel as if this film is really such a personal diary. It seems like you know how art is, because this is art, and art is subjective. So when you see a painting, one might see it in one form, another might see it in another. But it's sounds as if this film is very reflective of oneself. So as you watch it, you are seeing yourself in it, pulling those pieces of yourself out, even those pieces that need attention, and how you reflect it back during those darker times to bring this character to life is just, it's an amazing thing. And what I love so much is I feel as if this production is going to really help a lot of people heal in many ways, or at least touch upon areas within one's life that you need to explore, to seek that area of help that you need for yourself, and to just be reflective and how do I move forward through this process of things, So I love that. And I want to talk about the cinematography piece, because not only does this film bring you that authenticity and that reflective spirit, it also brings beauty through cinematography. So I know we don't have Andy on right now, but Oliver, can you speak to what your ideas were behind that, what you wanted to showcase around that piece of it?
Yeah, I think in terms of cinematography, it was, and this is true kind of for all departments in the storytelling as well, that keeping the perspective anchored in our protagonist, Henry, that was kind of like the rule that we followed. And so when we're thinking, how are we going to shoot a particular scene, we first have to approach it from how is Henry experiencing this particular moment. And so when we're showing like a wide to kind of, we want to craft it in a way that we're showcasing the place in a beautiful way, but at the same time, it's because Henry's attention is a bit wider in that particular moment. And when Henry's focused on an object, similarly, like the coverage needs to be very specific to that item. And when we had the fantastic opportunity of using a Steadicam on this shoot as well. And so a Steadicam is kind of this stabilized camera that can kind of glide rather than be anchored in one particular place. But I kind of lean on Andy of like, well, we have these tools kind of within, what's available. How can we use that to further enhance this idea, this rule of perspective? And that's when Andy kind of like broke it down for me of like, well, here's where we can be very static and the world feels almost like claustrophobic at times. And then here's when we can kind of be fluid, because part of this film having Bigfoot in it, Bigfoot is, well, maybe I won't say exactly what he is, but like one thing that he brings is a sense of play. And so very different from that like static perspective. It's more of this like fluid movement. So he's like, well, maybe that could be our Steadicam moment, and so in those ways, the cinematography helps to kind of translate ideas on paper into a plan of how we're going to execute this thing visually. So that's kind of like from a composition standpoint, but there's also this language of light and color throughout the whole thing. We're transitioning initially from this place. Intae used the word of like muted colors. I think that's kind of, we had a similar inspiration of like, well, let's approach this from kind of a less vibrant space that's more maybe interior, that's more neutralized in a way, and then kind of move into a space that has specific colors that we've been holding out on in the earlier scenes. Now it has places for it to start to like make its way out. Eventually we finally go kind of exterior, where it's like to kind of reflect the perspective of our main character kind of finally opening up. We've similarly through the cinematography open up, and the intention there is to kind of double down on the theme here, and try to get that theme across, I guess.
Yeah, it's telling its own story through the cinematography.
Oh, for sure.
Interesting. What was the most challenging scene to film, and how do you all work through it? And that's the question for both of you.
I wonder if we'll have similar or very different answers. Oliver, you want to go first? Or I can go first.
Yeah, go for it.
For me, the most challenging scene, I thought, reading it, was going to be a scene that seemed to lend itself to being the crying scene, right? It wasn't explicitly written as Henry cries here or anything, but to me, was the emotional darkest point of night moment in the script. And with that, the experiences I've had personally that are closest to that, like it seems to lend itself to be oh, this is the moment where we see the brokenness the most, or feel the brokenness the most. And with that, and especially with seeing how emotionally raw and vulnerable some of the performances were, again, in Oliver's incredible other short film, Places We Knew, like there, at least in reading it, there felt like a little pressure to me to be that kind of emotionally raw and vulnerable. But in doing the homework, and then more especially just on the day in the room, like I had that body memory of, oh, when I was in this place, I couldn't cry even if I wanted to. I just physically, corporeally, I didn't have that ability to release that way. And in the moment, it didn't feel right, and it didn't feel necessary. And an unplanned name drop here, but in working with Carrie Coon on Fargo, she has become one of my favorite actresses to follow, and I think she's fantastic in everything she does. I just saw a clip from, I believe her interview with the SAG Foundation, but she was talking about a former teacher that she had who let her know about crying scenes. Dry it up. Don't be afraid to dry it up, because it's not your job to cry. It's your job to help the audience feel the reality of that moment, and maybe they'll cry, right? So this was an opportunity to be grateful for the reality, the physical and emotional reality of the moment, where I could be like, oh no, my body knows what a truth that my intellectual mind didn't. I wouldn't be able to. I couldn't be able to release in that way here. So it was very challenging leading up to the scene for all the reasons that I thought on paper. It was challenging insofar as like we didn't have much time either. Just the reality of our shoot and where we needed to be locations wise. But the body knew some truths that the mind didn't that day. So it took that challenge and gave me something I wasn't expecting. Gave me something new.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. So beautiful. I mean, I was feeling all that. So, very beautiful. Okay. Love that. Okay, Oliver, what about you?
I have a different scene, which for me, it was I think later in the same day, though, which was a supermarket scene. For me, that was tricky because while so much of the story is placed in this kind of heavier feeling, there's also this totally almost opposite feeling of like play and like wonder and even like to the point where it can be tense, and to have that go face to face with that heavy feeling and to create that moment. And just production wise, there's also a lot of elements of like, now we have some extras, some actors, we have props, we have a light gag, we have Steadicam movement. So there's just a lot of different kind of moving pieces at the same time. And within all of that, to like pay attention to the right things. I found that to be a little bit tricky. And I think the way that I went about it is I really just like put the trust in the rest of the team and like, all right, we have our respective roles. Like that's how we're going to kind of play in this moment. Let me pay attention to working with Intae. Let me pay attention to, working with the other actors in this moment and like making sure that like truths, and those truths are like quite different depending on who I'm interacting with in that moment. But it's got to go from like here, flip around, and then like switch it to that truth, and to kind of do it like on the fly. That's also what I love about this, is because it's kind of like, you got to be snappy and you got to hold those multiple dimensions simultaneously. But I think doing it in that scene is when it was called upon the most for me in this shoot. So yeah, that was probably the most challenging for me.
Wow. It's so interesting to hear these different perspectives from the different roles that you each have with that film. Usually on film sets, it's not all work and no play. So were there any fun or unexpected moments on the set that made the experience even more memorable for each of you?
It was to speak to something that Oliver brought up earlier about his and Benjamin's relationship. I thought he really brought that to set as well. Like I felt a lot of freedom to play, obviously within structure, but in that there were a lot of like unexpected gems. I think the one that first popped into mind when you asked that question, though, was we had these fish that were bought for one shot, one scene, and they were brought in on the day. They were not I don't know how much work you got with them beforehand, Oliver, but they weren't quite doing what they were scripted to do. But it was fun. It was fun taking those castmates and rolling with their improv. So it was. I remember what we wanted, and the reality on the day were two different things, and it's always fun working with children and animals because you never know what's going to happen, and you have to be free. You have to be open to playing. So that was a nice little reminder moment on the same day on the same scene as the crying.
Yeah. When I think back about the fish scene, I remember, it's like, how are we going to get these fish to move? Like maybe if you feed it. So we incorporated that into we made sure like, we didn't feed them so that when you fed them, they were responding to food. And then you fed them and the fish just kind of like hovered there rather than move. And I could see how like because until that moment, I expected them to move to the food, right? And when they didn't, it was just so much funnier for me, I thought, because I thought not even the fish want to hang out with this guy.
Right? Yeah.
Like, this totally works. But like until it happened, I didn't know that like how I would respond to that. And when it did, and it was like, oh no, what are we going to do? How are we going to get these fish to move? It's like, we're good with them not moving. Let's move on. It's like that kind of like discovery along the way is definitely fun for sure.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So filmmaking is all about teamwork, which you both have so eloquently showcased here throughout this interview. What's one thing you admire about each other's craft? And I also want to hear about what you admire about Andy and Benjamin.
I can go first on that one, if that's all right, Intae.
Sure.
Start with Benjamin, Andy, and then I'll go to Intae. Benjamin, I mentioned it before about kind of like the looseness we have in collaborating with each other. Part of that comes from his simultaneously being extremely sensitive to kind of what's happening in a particular moment. And that can be within like the imagined moment of the story, but it can also be in the real moments that we have during our collaboration. But that like high level of sensitivity along with like a high level of openness, that combo results in like we kind of stay very honest throughout the whole process. And he kind of like helped me get to that space as well. So I definitely appreciate him for that. And then for Andy, he has a high level of preparation, to the point where, like, when we're on the set, now we're just kind of operating from, we can trust in, like, oh, we can do that because of this, that, and the other. And we kind of know that because we've kind of together done all of that homework together. And he flew in from London, and he was crashing at my house for about a week before we shot. And every morning he'd wake up and be like, all right, let's go through the shot list. I'm like, well, I don't want to be married to the shot list necessarily. He's like, no, it's not about like being married to the shot list. It's about knowing kind of all the reasons why a particular shot is needed, so that when we have to let them go on the day, we can pivot together and we can kind of know why we're doing it without having to say all the words on the day. And I was like, all right, let's do that. And so, we did it again and again and again. And then when we showed up on the day, when we had to pivot, we're like, hey, we're going to let this shot go, and just kind of like give each other a look. And we're like, yeah, let it go. And we just moved on. Or if he started fighting for a shot, or vice versa, I started fighting for a shot. There's just so much pre-work that, due to kind of his, initiative that we've done, that like by the time we're here, it's like, let's roll, So he brought a lot of efficiency that we definitely needed during the shoot. I appreciated him for that. And then with Intae, I kind of first recognized this in the audition, and then very much so kind of working with him in person. But there's this like magnetism that he has. And that magnetism is, the way that you talk through the challenging scene that you had that day of, I have these kind of conscious thoughts about what the scene might be calling for, but at the end of the day, I got to stay true to like what's going on with me in this scene. And if that's not true, then it's not going to get past that filter. Right. And so everything's kind of, it seems kind of from my position and working with him, that it's coming from this place of like truth. And when all of that kind of performance comes from that place, it feels like I just want to pay attention. Like I just want to watch all the like little movements that I don't know what he's aware of or not aware of in terms of like what's happening visually, but like it feels so real, and I can't look away. And for that, I think the whole film is better.
Thank you. I didn't get the opportunity to interact with Benjamin really, but in working with Oliver and Andy, I think one is only really allowed to be that truthful and that vulnerable and that seemingly authentic when there's trust there, right? And in working with a director and DP, like how do we quantify that trust? I mean, there's no real quantification of trust there, but like that trust is built on foundations of, oh, these people know what they want. They know what they want artistically. They know they are comfortable enough in their craft where there's room for collaboration. What I admire about Oliver and Andy is in their roles as director and DP, they wield a lot of power. I've seen, a lot of directors and DPs want to exert a certain amount of control and try and hold people and the takes to as close to their specific pre-planned vision as possible sometimes, and that wasn't the case here. I think with the amount of prep work that Oliver just alluded to, like they knew what was at the heart of the story that they wanted to tell, as well as the cinematic language they wanted to use in telling it. And they were open to having us actors collaborate with them to try and find if there was a more interesting truth, or if there was something that felt more authentic on the day. And they were clear with their vision, and they were clear when they needed something a little bit different. They needed something that aligned a little bit more with the story they were trying to tell and the language they were trying to use. But I trusted that I could play. And I also saw very clearly, like, the colors on the palette that they were using, and felt freedom to wield the brush this way and that, and that they would be like, oh, let's not whip out the glittery one quite yet, or whatever it may be. So what do I admire about them and their respective crafts? Like, that they are masters of their respective crafts, and they know how to get the point across in a way that feels collaborative, in a way that feels relaxed, and allows people to bring their truths to the project, to the take, to the shoot.
Lovely. Oliver, your films explore cultural identity and human experiences. How do you hope Big Steps contributes to conversations around diversity and representation in film?
So the previous film that Intae mentioned a couple times, Places We Knew, is a Japanese-American story. And it has fully Japanese and fully American and Japanese-American characters in it. So the kind of representation factor there is quite obvious. In this one, there's not necessarily anything that's like more easily identifiable as Asian American, but it was important for me to kind of have Asian American representation kind of in our lead role, because one of the things that I hope to do, being in the Chicago area, is to kind of have more Asian American representation kind of on screen. And specifically, I love that this wasn't an Asian American story, Big Steps, because I think so much of that representation isn't about stories that are specifically about that. It's just about, like, there are every possible shade of, like, life experience within that, and to kind of express that on screen was something that I wanted to do here, especially at the casting stage. But also at the same time, kind of behind the camera, we have a lot of life experience that's kind of different as well. Benjamin, he's Hungarian, and Andy's from Hong Kong, and we have some Chicago-based people, and we have, I like having teams that are kind of like all over the place, because I think that helps to look at the situation differently, to, like, get different flavors, different ideas kind of in there. And the kind of result of having that collection is bigger, I think, than any, like, individual piece within that could get alone.
Yeah, and I think this story will resonate across color lines. It's just a more personal, innate story of oneself. We all feel these things. We all go through these things in life. So that's beautifully stated. Thank you, Oliver. Intae, you've worked on projects across different genres as an actor. What a remarkable career you've had. What kind of stories excite you the most? And what do you hope to see more in the industry?
Well, just to piggyback off of Oliver's answer to the last question first, I think it's fun to show that Asian Americans are people too. that we're all human beings dealing with human problems, and we don't necessarily go through our everyday being like, "Woe is me, woe is Asian American me." Sometimes the problems are just more universal, or it's akin to the most personal being the most universal, right? What are the stories that most resonate with me? What are the ones that I'm excited to work on and excited to spotlight? I think we're at an interesting point in storytelling where we've had this decade of hyperrealism to a large aspect. Obviously, we have all the superhero movies as well, but I'm really excited that at this moment seems to be a little bit of a pendulum swing back into more of a focus on indie filmmaking and indie storytelling. Obviously, we all want to be paid for our efforts, but I think the cinematic language and the storytelling language that's a little bit more independent is exciting insofar as we get to play more, we get to experiment with the media more. We get to see, like, we get to make those fascinating discoveries in the messy parts. I love, like I mentioned before, the Eternal Sunshines of the world, the Severances of the world, where we are using these devices that are unique to whether it's film, television, theater, audio storytelling. We get to explore these devices unique to each of the mediums and explore reality through unreality. I really like that dichotomy. I really like that interplay, and I feel like it helps keep things playful and exciting while also feeling and speaking to things that are real. So I hope to work on those kinds of projects at all different scales. Like, I would love to work on a Civil War, which is a sci-fi, but not really. I would love to work on a Hiro Murai project, whether that's another season of Atlanta, or it seems like maybe they've moved on from that show. But to explore how magical life is and the elements of life are through magic that we don't recognize in the everyday world that we walk through, I think is the kind of storytelling that is most interesting to me right now, right here.
So what is next for each of you? Any exciting projects in the pipeline? Anything you want to state there?
Well, I'm on a national tour for the foreseeable future. I'm working on I'm part of the cast of Life of Pi, which is touring across the country for months longer. We'll see how much longer after that. Hopefully there's some sort of extension. But yeah, I'll be continuing to trek across the country with that show and hopefully get to pick up some short-term gigs here and there along the way as well.
For me, I at the end of last year kind of formalized a video production services business. The name is from the short, so it's called Big Steps Productions.
Woo-woo!
I love that.
Yeah, it works. It works.
Yeah, it does. It's a great name.
So yeah, I'm kind of focused on kind of getting that going. And then on the more kind of creative side, there's two different feature projects that are in the very early kind of writing stages.
Hey.
Very nice, very nice. So for aspiring filmmakers, actors, I guess even cinematographers, we should talk about that. What's the best advice you've received that helped shape your career? So let's start with you, Oliver, and then we'll go to you, Intae. What's the best advice you've received?
Yeah. I think for me, it's something to the effect of don't wait, make your own opportunities. That kind of like getting into kind of whether it's waiting for a particular project or a particular role, at some degree we all have to do that because we're working together with the industry in a way. But at the same time, like to get to the place where we're ready to be that thing, you kind of need to get there kind of on your own in a way, in terms of like the preparation bit. So I think getting good at creating the opportunities for yourself that get you to that place is something that we're responsible for ourselves. So for example, directing is something that I kind of hope to do as close to full-time as possible, at some point in the future. But along the way, how do I create pockets where I get to practice that, where I get to do that? So once a month, I'm asking actors and a camera person to kind of come together, and I write a 2-page scene. We kind of do it together, and it's just an opportunity for us to kind of explore different characters, different genres, different kind of approaches to storytelling. So this would be kind of like my version of like I'm trying to create an opportunity for myself to get better. And similarly with like Big Steps itself is like a project that started with, it's time for a project. I'm not going to wait for someone to be like, hey, here's a project. Can you direct it? So everything from kind of the funding to the writing to kind of how it all came together. There's a lot of self-driving, and it's not just for me. There's a lot of different people here that are kind of coming together on their own, like efforts that are making this possible. So yeah, don't wait. Get good at making opportunities for yourself.
And I think to go kind of hand in hand with that is it's a marathon, not a race, right? Which is a nice quote, but I think the reality of that is I think there are multiple facets to that. Number one, like if it's a marathon, not a race, you got to train for a marathon. So Oliver keeps himself fresh every month. Like as artists, we have to exercise a bit of artistic agency. And there are elements that we feel like are very much dictated by the gatekeepers, those who are in control of the industry. But the reality is, like, if you want to be a better cellist, you practice cello 3-4 hours a day. So if you want to be a more in-tune artist, what can you do? You can, not everything might be the thing, but reading will help that. Writing will help that. Working on a monologue, whatever it is, right? So make sure you're training. I think the other element of it's a marathon, not a race, that goes a little bit underrepresented or underexpressed is you gotta take care of yourself if you're training for a marathon. Like find a job so that you're not worried about money all the time, right? Make sure you're okay with you. Find those people that lift you up, that make you feel light, that make you feel at home. Eat well. Go see a therapist if you need a therapist. Get outside. Drink water, right? But you got to take care of yourself and make sure that you're growing as an artist, but you got to take care of yourself and make sure you're growing as a human being as well. So train for the marathon in all the ways, not just running.
Yeah, I love both those answers. It's so true. And we really need all of that. So let's talk about some final questions here. Where and when can people watch Big Steps, and will there be a premiere or initial screening?
Yes, Oliver.
Great question. I don't have any specific dates at this time. We're kind of we're at the very tail end of post-production now, so kind of all the pieces are coming together for it to be ready for the world. And the plan right now is, starting from next month, the festival journey begins. So from there, a lot of like those screening dates that you mentioned will become available. All that information is going to be on the Big Steps short film Instagram page. But in terms of like maybe a private screening for cast and crew, I'll let you know, Intae.
Okay. All right. Hopefully the tour works its way through the Chicago area at that time.
We'll make sure that our schedules are aligned.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
And you mentioned festivals. So
Yep.
Has it been accepted or submitted yet to any festivals?
No, we haven't submitted it yet.
Okay.
The kind of first one that we'll apply to is at the very start of April. And that's going to kick us off. Yeah.
Okay. And then are there any plans for online streaming or broader distribution?
After kind of its festival run is when myself and the producer, Laterion, we're going to be looking to make some licensing deals with networks and streaming for sure.
Beautiful. And I'm sure you'll do well there. I have no doubt. So how can our audience support Big Steps and its journeys?
Sure. So the Instagram page, Big Steps _short film. There's a lot of information there, especially kind of going forward during its festival run. You'll kind of see when those screenings become available. So watching out for that. And then in terms of other support, we're always, looking for private screenings if we can do that. That kind of stays within the rules of festival stuff that we're not quite public yet, but we can share if it's private. I would love to do something like that for cast and crew and kind of maybe like a more intimate audience.
Intae, how can folks follow you and support your craft?
They can follow me on Blue Sky, on Instagram. I'm at the Intaenet on Instagram. I'm, I think, intaekim.com on Blue Sky. As far as support the craft, hire me.
Okay, exactly.
But besides that, I appreciate all the support along the way. But I'm excited to work. I'm excited to work. So I hope all the artists listening write something, shoot something, work on something, and I hope to see them along the way. But I would love to see a follow, and if you have any books that you recommend that have activated you artistically, I would love those recommendations.
Ooh, nice. Well said.
I agree. Well, thank you. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you to Oliver and Intae. Also, we want to give a big thanks to Benjamin and Andy as well. Big Steps is a beautiful film, and we can't wait for audiences to experience it. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Follow Big Steps on Instagram at Big Steps _short film. Keep up with our amazing guests. And until next time, stay empowered, stay involved, and always remember, real change begins with us, within our communities. See you next time.